So, welcome everyone to another virtual conference of PS Group. I'm Yolanda Ustanova, Communication and Event Manager at PS. So I will be moderating today's conference, Maritime Cybersecurity, with the fantastic lineup of the speakers, Mr. Rafael Company from Valencia Port Foundation and Mr. Jacob Larson from BIMCO. But firstly, I would love to mention the shipping industry focuses on decarbonization or green matters more while overlooking the cybersecurity issues. The entrance of the digitalization resulted in an astonishing effect on the shipping industry. However, it brought some concerns about cybersecurity, and recent studies have found the technological system used on tankers, container ships, and cruise ships easily penetrable. 98% of IoT device traffic is unencrypted, exposing personal and confidential data on the network. So we decided to touch the cybersecurity importance in order to raise awareness by discussing this issue with our experts. Now, before we start, a few housekeeping items I would love to bring your attention. So we will run with both of the presentations. And after that, we'll go to Q&A session after completing all the presentations, and we aim to conclude at 4 p.m. Central European time. We were a little bit late, and our apologies for that. And we are excited to make this event as interactive as possible. So we encourage all of you to be very active with your questions and comments. So you are able to send and submit all your questions through the Q&A button that will be active during the whole event, and you can see it at the bottom of your screen. So we should have enough time for all your questions, and we ask that you let us know if the question is directed to any particular person. Lastly, the presentations and recordings of the event will be made available for the audience. The recording will be uploaded to the event website and the VS Group YouTube channel next week. And for presentations or any other requests, you are kindly asked to contact us through info@vsgroup.uk email address. You will be answered in shortest accordingly. So let's get started then. I would love to give floor to Mr. Rafael Company, who is the Director of Safety and Security at Valencia Port Foundation. He has been involved in several European projects since 2003, and he joined the Port of Valencia related to cybersecurity, and also contributed to ENISA guidelines concerning the good cyber practices on cybersecurity in ports, and he is also project coordinator of Sauron. Mr. Rafael, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Yeah. Okay, many thanks, Elnara, and good afternoon to everybody. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. Just a second. Okay. Okay, can you hear the screen? Yeah.
Yes, everything's fine.
Yes, okay, okay, perfect. Okay, so, well, also thank you to you all for spending your time the next hour in this event. So, well, before I start with different initiatives and focus on cybersecurity in ports, I would like to introduce very briefly the Port of Valencia and the Valencia Port Foundation. So here you can see the presentation, like an index. So I will talk a little bit about the Valencia, where Valencia is and where are the different initiatives as the Valencia Port Foundation. And also I will comment also about smart ports, what are our main initiatives on security, and at the end, different best practices and lessons learned in different European projects. So while Valencia Port is Spain's leading Mediterranean port in terms of commercial traffic, mostly containerized cargo, so our main activity is in the container traffic. and due to its dynamic area of influence and an extensive network connecting it to major world ports. So we have very active participation in many different business. So also we are linked to different innovation initiatives in cooperation with other ports. So we have two visions, the business part, but also it's quite important our innovative initiatives like the cybersecurity and others. So, well, I suppose that many of you know where is located the Valencia port. The Port of Valencia is at the East Mediterranean coast, and the Port Authority is leading three ports. The main one, the big one, is Valencia, but also other two small ports like Sagunto and Gandia that are very close to Valencia. And some figures that I would like to share with you is, as you can see here, is one of the biggest ports when we talk about container traffic in the Mediterranean, and the sixth port in Europe. So this is a list of 2018, but well, has changed not too much with incompetence with Pireo in number of containers, but it's a leader position at the top ports in Europe. And who are the Valencia Port Foundation? Well, the Valencia Port Foundation is a research and innovative center, belong to the Port Authority. So we are in contact with many different fields, collaborating with the Port Authority of Valencia. So I mean, so for sustainability, security, safety, digital transformation, and so on. So because our idea is to participate or to act as a bridge between technological companies, industry, universities with the port community. So our main value is how to bring the innovation to the port community. And carry on with the presentation, and now focus on the different points that I'm going to discuss and to explain today is the smart ports. I believe that is a very good point to start when we talk about cybersecurity. As you know, many terms like sensorization, the cloud computing, the machine learning, artificial intelligence, digital transformations, the industry 4.0 is being mentioned in many of the ports, of the port clusters, the port of the future, ports 4.0. So in this regard, there are many sensors now. The security has changed a lot because now everything is monitoring with the implementation of different sensors that we use not only for the security or the safety of our employees or any threat at the port, also in order to monitoring environmental aspects, the efficiency of the cranes of the operation. So it's quite important, the sensorization in this time, to know exactly what is happening in real time in our port. So, and then if we know what is happening, we can control and we can reply and we can improve the activities. So that is a very brief definition of a smart port. So the idea that we have now is a port with a lot of systems, all the connected systems, in order to know exactly what is happening in real time. And here, I would like to mention what are the different levels of the connectivity. So there are different levels for us. So when we talk about the first one is an internal digital transformation. The internal, an individual company implement different sensors in order to control their own operations, their own activity. But in a second step, in a second level, is the connection of this company with the, in our case, with the Port Authority, in order to agilize and facilitate different business management. So for example, in our case, the connection of internal, of individual port companies with the Port Authority systems, like the port community systems, in order to facilitate this kind of business. The third one is connected or the connection with all the port community. When we talk about the port community, we talk about all the stakeholders involved in the supply chains related to the port. So we are talking about importers, exporters, so the different ships agents, consignee. So it's quite important, the connection between the different systems, that there are a lot. And the top one is the level 4, is the hyperconnection. The hyperconnection part is when everything is connected and you can have business from the top to the down. So I mean, from the beginning of the supply chain to the end of the supply chain, that all system is because all systems are connected. So you can see here some examples that we mentioned with the connectivity. We talk about the Internet of Things and different Internet of Services. So thanks to many of the new technological aspects, we can generate, we can modify many business. That is a good opportunity. In our case, for example, when we talk about this kind of systems, we can talk about the single window. So we send or we make all the transactions, all the information transference and so on in a single environment. So we can improve the efficiency of a port, and then we facilitate and we are more efficient in this kind of services. So as I commented before, we can see it's an example of this kind of single window. In our case, one of our initiatives is the Valencia Port PCS. So you can see here in the slide, the different actors that are participated through the same platform. So you can avoid time, you can facilitate the connection and contact with others. So it's quite important in order to improve the efficiency and saving time. Other systems to demonstrate this kind of hyperconnectivity is the use of the different industrial networks in order to the control in real time of the different operations that you have at the port at different moments. So you can control this, you can monitor it, and you can anticipate if you have any problem or you are detecting some threat. Other examples in a terminal, not only on the Port Authority, the idea is to develop other innovative projects focused also on the different terminals with the implementation of the Internet of Things, cloud computing, machine learning, and so on. So the idea is how to manage the different parts in a terminal, how to control the different screens. So the idea is receive information, receive data in order to improve the different operation. But yes, we are talking about connectivity, and because we are the development of the technology is very fast. We have the connectivity which provide a lot of opportunity, but also we have to know that we have some barriers in this grow up of the technologies. Some barriers that I would like to highlight here. So the investment is one of them. So the investment of companies in new technologies. Also, there are another one like the change management. So, you know, technological innovations in the companies. So people has to know and to learn how to manage this new technology. Social rejection, when we talk about the labor force, so the reduction in jobs. This is some discussions on the table about is good the technology, but reduce jobs or not. So it has discussed in many forums. Also, we can talk about the technological challenges. So which is the best technology? We have to implement the best one, and then we have to make prototypes, to test and to demo in different companies before go to the market and so on. And one of them that I have pointed out is the cybersecurity. So yes, there are a lot of opportunity, but now with this kind of connectivity, we have a lot of threats that come in sometimes because we need awareness of what are the cyberspace threats. We need training, and sometimes the growing up of the technology, maybe our computer, our systems are obsolete, and so we have a lot of gaps and vulnerabilities in our system. And finally, the collaborative work is change of behaviors for workers, because you have to connect and share information with others directly. And as mentioned in some of them, the qualified personnel. Now we need personnel who manage well this kind of new technologies. And talking about this, our main idea is that this kind of threats, not only when we talk about security, we talk about cybersecurity, also how has changed the security. So this kind of connectivity, we can talk about two things. So the operational part in a port. So as I mentioned it before, the sensors, like CCTV cameras, weather forecast, control of different rooms, fire alarms. We have a lot of physical sensors that they are connected and on the other hand, we have the systems, and they can be integrated in both domains. So I mean here that maybe in this example that you can see in this slide, so a cyber attack, an access to the illegal access or not allowed access to a server who control the command and control room can cause other threats. So the idea here is then to analyze the cybersecurity like an integral security. So taking into account this both domain, which is the controlled part when we talk about security. So I mean here the operational, and how it's connected with the information systems. Here I would like to show you in this complex environment, because you know that a port is a very complex scenario, because there are a lot of different stakeholders, different size of companies, different activities. So I would like here to give you at a glance in a very simple slide, which can be the scenario of the port scenario. So in fact, the most important for a port is at the time. So the vessels berthed and berthed is important in order to the vessel traffic and the uploading and loading of cargo. So I mean here that the most important is to agilize, to be fast and to agilize this kind of time. So this is the more important, but we have to guarantee the safety, the security. Also, we believe in the sustainability protection in order to make it initiative in order to reduce the energy consumptions. So there are a lot of activities that we have to control. And of course, there are many stakeholders that also we have to guarantee the safety, the security, and also comply with environmental regulations. And some of the examples that I would like to mention it related to this kind of cyber security initiative that we have implemented at the Port of Valencia, and we are collaborating with Port Terminals, Port Authority, and other stakeholders, is this project, the Sauron project. So this project is a project financed by the Horizon 2020, and the idea is combining this part that I mentioned it before, combining the physical part with the IT systems. So in why we motivate the development of this project? Because we have seen that the departments of IT department is completely different to the security department. So the idea is to facilitate like a tool in order to receive data and information of these both domains in order to prevent any threat, and in case of any event or any emergency, to receive this data in order to the decision making. This project, in a very easy concept, is formed by different, as you can see in this slide, it's like a different levels. So there's a part which integrate the operational sensors, that I mentioned before, the CCTV cameras, the fire alarms, smoke detection, also the barriers access. Also, we have implemented the use of drones, because we know that drones is a very important tool now for facilitating for operations, and also connected with the cybersecurity of cyber side. So this physical part and the cyber situation awareness will be connected, and the idea is correlate all the information coming from both of them, with the idea to send this data to the command and control center, and then they know exactly what is happening and how to respond against any threat. And finally, we have created an emergency warning system in order to inform to the population in case of any important risk. So how to inform to different, depend of the target, of course, to the actuation or the situation in an emergency moment. Well, here is only to show you the concept. So for example, maybe it's better here to give you an example to understand better this situation. So in security, maybe we are controlling physical parts. For example, we have a problem in a barrier. Maybe the ports, there is a problem in the access of the port because barriers is not working, but it's not the same sent to the maintenance people in order to check what happened. So if we are talking about a cyber attack to the system, which control the access of the port, because it's not the goal, the access could be to create interruptions, chaos, and so on, and you have a threat in another side. So the idea is, in a real time, send this kind of information to the security officer in order to say, well, this is not a problem, a mechanical problem. We are talking about a system that we have connected and can send information in a very fast way. Okay. Also, during this project, of course, we have to validate the results, and we have validated the results through different demos and testing the different technologies. Here we have some examples of what kind of sources we have testing. So all the CCTV network in a port with the fire and smoke alarms, the control access, the use of drones, also the aids and other tools like GPS tablets. And we have connected in this correlation with other sources from cyber. So here we have worked with cyber experts in order to define the best and most innovative parts in the cybersecurity. Here you can see the pilot sessions. One was at the Valencia port. We made a drill in a container. It's like simulating like a cyber attack against the IT system of a port with a terminal operation system with some changes and correlating with different physical threats. And the second one was at the port of Pireo, but this time was focused on a cruise ship. And also, I would like to carry on following with other initiatives like the cybersecurity incident handling, warning and response systems, with acronym was CyberSen, where we have analyzed a pilot focused on the transportation of container cargo. Here the idea was checking the different websites and the different cyberspace. So not only the LiveNet, LiveNet is where everybody search different things. It's also checking the darknet or deep web in order to know if the some actor or some stakeholders has appeared in the live or the deep web in order to follow this kind of proof of alarms, and guarantee that there is not anything being developing against the supply chain. Others is the cyber that here, to understand that here, the transport sectors need an energy sector also be joined in cooperation. So the idea here is to analyze well the problems in case of any disruption or any cut in the energy supply to a port. So the idea here is to create like a energy twins in order to analyze well what are the main vulnerabilities, the main threats, and also know exactly the main problems, but taking into account the economic cost. That can be an interruption of the supply chain due to an energy interruption. And well, finalizing with the different initiatives, we have this one, the Cyrene. Cyrene is an initiative that is more focused on the certification of the security. So we know many about the ISOs, the 28000, the NIST directives, the ISM Code. So the idea is to harmonize and try to standardize all of them, not focus on an organ in an individually in a terminal or in a focus on a single organization. The idea is how to analyze all the supply chain, taking into account what is the difference vulnerabilities, and how is the connection, because maybe an organization can invest a lot in technology, has the best technologies in order to assure this, the security, the cyber security, but sometimes your connection with other company can be a gate for a threat. So the idea is analyze everything, all the actors along the supply chain, and then certificate what are the main points to take into account in order to be certificated as a security as a security model. So, and well, this is the end. Later on, we can comment and your comments, your questions and answers. So thank you very much for your attention, and I give the floor to Lara. Thank you very much.
Rafael, thank you so much for your interesting presentation and for your insights. I would love to continue with the next speaker, Mr. Jacob Larsen, who is the head of Maritime Safety and Security at BIMCO, the world's largest association of ship owners. So Jacob is a master mariner and command and staff course graduate from Danish Defense Academy, and he got valuable experience in the companies such as Nordic Tankers and Norsk Line, and since 2018, Jacob has been holding the position of Head of Maritime Safety and Security Department at BIMCO. Jacob, the floor is yours.
Many thanks, Lara, and apologies to everyone. I think the late start was really due to me. I had a technical glitch. I certainly hope it wasn't a hacker who managed to hack his way into my system, but I don't think so, at least. What I will talk about today is the approach that ship owners are taking to cybersecurity in the maritime domain. And this is an extremely important issue to ship owners. We have some regulation coming up from the International Maritime Organization, which is the UN agency responsible for developing maritime regulation. And we have to live up to this by sometime during 2021. And so therefore the question is extremely pertinent. But before we go into all that, let me take you back to a wonderful summer day in Copenhagen on the 27th of June in 2017. At that time, I was working at the Maersk Line headquarters in Copenhagen, and my responsibilities were related to global security, so the security of both the fleet and also all the shore headquarters across the globe, and also maritime quality. So nothing sort of directly related to cybersecurity, but anyway, there was of course to a certain extent an interface there, you could say. During the morning, we were all sitting in the office and working, and all of a sudden, one of the secretaries came running down the aisle, screaming, "We are under attack! We are under attack! Pull out all your internet cables! Shut down your computers! We are under cyber attack!" And the whole organization, I mean, we just looked at this lady running around, and we thought, okay, this looks pretty serious. Let's start to switch off computers. So we pulled out all the cables we could and switched off all our computers, and we even switched off our mobile phones because none of us were really that sort of knowledgeable when it came to cyber attacks and what was it all about. So we thought, okay, let's switch off everything we can. And that was really the start for an extremely difficult period for the big company, Maersk. I can safely say the company at one point was really at its knees, and we were extremely nervous whether we were able to recover from this cyber attack. So 3 months later, and some $200 million later, the company was beginning to come together. Our IT people, they chose an approach where they prioritized the customer interface as number one priority, and began to reconstruct that. And over time, and as time went by, we were actually able to bring all our systems back to life. But it took a considerable period before, especially all the back-end systems were up and running. So things like human resource support and some of the sort of more databases and things like that were all sort of a bit in the background and not sort of directly the front towards customers. Those systems all took a bit of time to get back online. So I think that was really my first real encounter with cybersecurity, and it was a really dramatic one. And I think it made everybody in the shipping industry sit up and realize that this is something that we really need to take serious. So, but this was an attack that affected the shore organization. But interestingly enough, none of our ships were actually directly affected. So the ships could continue to sail in a safe manner. None of the ship's systems were affected. But of course, knowledge of where the containers were was all of a sudden decentralized. So that was held on board each ship. And so there was a huge sort of manual reconstruction work ongoing to ensure that all the containers arrived in the right location and at the right time. And of course, there were delays and some containers went missing and so on because all the backup systems, they had been attacked. I mentioned in the introduction that the International Maritime Organization have passed some legislation that ship owners need to live up to. And basically, this legislation requires ship owners to take cyber risk management into account and implement procedures in their safety management systems sometime during 2021. Some companies will have their regulatory audits early in the year, and they have to be ready by then, and others will have it later in the year, and that's the deadline for them. So how would a ship owner company go about this? Well, as I said, the cyber risk management procedures need to be somehow embedded in existing systems. And in a ship owner company, there are normally two systems. There's the system regulating the ship's security, so everything that has to do with theft and smuggling and things like that. That's called the ship security plan. And then there is that system called the safety management system that is more managing all the safety risks. So everything to do with how to navigate the ship, how to look after the machinery on board, how to manage the cargo, and how to do different kinds of work on board, like welding and paint work and working in the masts and so on. Everything is regulated in the safety management system. And the IMO's decision was really to include cyber risk management in the safety management system. And some might be a bit surprised here, but the philosophy was that the most important thing was that in case a cyber attack would have implications to the safety of the ship or the personnel, then that should be the approach to take. And this is why the direction was taken to implement it in the safety management system. There is one aspect, though, of cybersecurity, and that is the physical access to computer systems on board. And normally the physical access is regulated under the ship security plan. And this is why the physical access part normally will be covered in the ship security plan. So you have two sets of guidance that cover different aspects of cybersecurity management, and the majority of the procedures will be found in the safety management system. One core element of a safety management system is a risk assessment, and I'm sure you're all aware that the same applies to cyber risk management. You need to carefully assess the risks that you are confronted with to be able to derive what are the right mitigating measures to apply. The ISM Code, which is that piece of regulation that regulates safety management systems, it states that the objectives of the safety management system should be to assess all identified risks to ships, personnel, and the environment, and establish appropriate safeguards. Interestingly enough, and this is an old piece of regulation, it dates back to, I think, the 80s. Interestingly enough, it doesn't say that cyber risks are not covered by the scope of the ISM Code. So actually one could argue that it has been the intent of the ISM Code all along to also cover cyber risks, even at a time before cyber risks were really something that was talked about. To help ship owners manage cybersecurity on board their ships, BIMCO and a number of other industry associations have developed the guidelines for cybersecurity on board ships. And they are currently in their third version, and right now there's a revision work ongoing to a version 4, which we hope to have out on the street perhaps mid-November or something like that. We are at the very final iteration of having a version 4. And this publication has detailed guidance on how to identify threats, how to identify vulnerabilities, and also how to manage the different risks, especially under the management systems, the safety management systems. There are also guidance there addressing contingency plans on how to respond and recover from cyber incidents. As I said, risk assessment is an absolutely core activity when it comes to cyber risk management, and nothing could be more true when it comes to ships. The model that we advocate is to look at risk as a sort of a concept where a lot of different factors all play a role. And I say factors because actually, if you try to calculate a risk, if you try to quantify the different elements here, then you will arrive at a calculation where you actually end up multiplying all the different factors here. So this figure here should be read as, for example, threat is the multiplication of capability, opportunity, and intent, and risk is the multiplication of likelihood and impact. And I think it's interesting to dive a little bit deeper into the concept of threat. And the reason is that often when we hear IT knowledgeable people talk about cyber risks, they talk a lot about vulnerabilities and all the possibilities there are to hack a system or to spread malware. And indeed, this is very relevant. This is the pink box you can see called vulnerabilities, and this is very important, of course. There's also a lot of talk about the impact, and I just gave you a brief taste of that in my introduction when I mentioned the huge impact the cyber attack had on Maersk Line, on the Maersk Group, really. And so the combination of vulnerabilities and a huge impact would automatically lead people to thinking, well, this is really dramatic stuff. We need to safeguard against everything so that we're absolutely sure. I don't think that's an entirely correct approach to take, and let me explain you why. And to arrive at that explanation, we need to look a little bit more at the concept of the threat, because as you can see here, if the threat is 0, then actually the likelihood will be very small, and so will the risk. And risk management is not a question about removing all risk, because that's always extremely difficult. Risk management is about reducing risk to an acceptable level. So looking a little bit closer at the threat, I mentioned that threat is really the multiplication of capability, opportunity, and intent. And if you look at the threat of a deliberate hacker trying to go in and steal data, of course that threat can be there, but it depends on what data are we talking about. If, for example, we are talking about the data that a company uses to optimize their engine performance, or the performance of generators on board, or what do I know, then yeah, some people might be interested in that, but perhaps, I mean, people that have the skills and the ability to perform a hack, perhaps they are more interested in other data, and so perhaps you don't necessarily need to totally safeguard that kind of data. Perhaps you should spend your resources elsewhere. So you know, while there is plenty of opportunity, I mean, for those devices that are connected to the internet, I mean, there will be opportunity to enter via these devices. Perhaps the intent is not so much there. The capability is another thing. Of course, to carry out a hack, you need to have a certain capability. It's perhaps beyond the remit of some, but I mean, dedicated hackers can do this. But at least as far as I've been told, to hack a ship and to try to work your way in through ship's networks is really not that very easy, because ship systems are connected in a way that makes it somehow challenging. I'm not an IT expert myself, so I'm afraid I can't really sort of vouch for that information, but that's what I've been told by experts. So all in all, while you know, it may be possible to imagine all sorts of horror scenarios with hackers hacking their way into ship control systems and making the ship turn, or paralyzing the ship's engines. The reality is that it's probably not, there are probably not very many people with the intent to do it, and also probably not so many with the real capability to do it. And just to sort of qualify that statement a little bit, I have yet not heard of any cyber risk or cybersecurity related incident on board a ship that has led to the loss of life or any sort of very serious accidents. I've heard of incidents where, for example, malware has been introduced in connection with a software update to the ship's electronic chart display or something like that, and that leads to downtime, and it costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of time. But normally it's not. I haven't simply heard of any sort of direct accidents as the results of this. I heard a lot of rumors, but when you ask questions like which company was affected, and you know, it's very difficult to get any clear answers. So I'm not saying that the risk is not there. I'm just saying that currently it hasn't really materialized very much, and there are several reasons for that. One thing is the reasons that I just explained, but the other reason is that actually a very large portion of the world fleet is incredibly low tech. I was very impressed with Raphael's presentation about how connected the port of Valencia is and what is the ambition and so on, and it is impressive. But I have to say that not many ships are at that level of connectivity yet. And actually many ships there are not connected at all. I mean, the minute they're outside the reach of mobile phones, they simply go on their own, and the only way to get in contact with them is to call them on the satellite phone. So many ships have very poor, if any at all, internet connection while they're underway. So that's just something to take note of. But of course, it shouldn't be something on which we should rest and just say that everything is fine and dandy, because there's no question that the development is that ships are being more and more connected. They will connect more and more with the shore organization that is responsible for their deployment, but they will also connect more and more with ports. And indeed, BIMCO is deeply involved in the development of digital standards to allow easy exchange of information with ports, basically in an effort to carry on with smooth and safe operations in a more expeditious manner. So there's no question that development is going in the direction of more and more digitalization. When assessing the risks, we recommend that you use an existing concept that is already known to ship owner companies, and this is how we normally do it. You look at the likelihood of an event and you look at the impact, and then you score it, and you arrive at a certain risk. And if it's not acceptable, then you have to somehow mitigate that risk. So the same can be done in the context of cyber security risk assessment. And here's an example where the ECDIS, that's the electronic chart display, is subjected to this methodology, and by taking certain mitigation steps, you arrive at a risk which is acceptable. I fully appreciate that it's not an easy task to quantify how big is the impact or how big is the likelihood, and to help the user do that, each safety management system will have their own definition of what is likelihood level 1, what is likelihood level 2, or what is impact level 3 and 4, and so on and so forth. So that will help the user carry out the risk assessment. It's important to say that some of the mitigation steps here for one particular system may also have a positive effect on other neighboring systems, and therefore you can't just go through it system by system. You have to take a sort of an overall approach where you look at where do I get the most bang for the buck, so to speak, where do I get the best effect of the mitigation measures I choose. If you choose to mitigate all risks down to minimum level, then I am quite sure it will be very expensive, and probably that will make it more difficult to defend the business case for such comprehensive risk management. Anyway, if you look at an average ship owner, I mean, there are some immediate steps that I suppose every risk assessment would lead to, and that is of course that a ship owner would need to map all the accesses and data flows coming in and out of the ship. It's always an idea to segregate different networks, so all critical systems, administration networks, crew, and so on, and of course the operational systems, they should be segregated as a minimum by a firewall. You need to protect your access to shipboard computers. You need to protect email and other internet-facing systems. And finally, and that's important enough, is awareness training of all staff. And that's really both in the ship, everything, all the people that have access to computers and use them as part of either their personal or their professional tasks on board. But also the whole shore organization needs, of course, to be aware of how do I contribute to the overall cyber risk management. With that, I will end my presentation. I look forward to having a further dialogue with you. Thank you very much.
Jacob, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. The thing is, Rafael has some connection problem. So let's get started with you, the Q&A, the questions that is addressed directly to you, and hopefully he will be able to join us a little later. Okay, we have few questions, and let me check the questions that is, directed to you. And okay. Dear Mr. Larsen, the vulnerability of vessels to GNSS spoofing attacks is an important issue. What kind of measures could be taken in order not to experience the issue happened in 2017? At least 20 ships located in the Black Sea region reported anomalies to their GNSS system.
Yes, many thanks for that question. The problem of GNSS spoofing goes back several years. It's true that we've seen it over the past couple of years in the Black Sea, and it's probably related to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. But we've also seen it earlier, for example, in the waters off North Korea. Actually, GNSS spoofing is not so much a cyber risk management problem. It's more a question of signals interference, and it's not something that is going on in cyberspace. It's something that goes on in the electromagnetic spectrum, where all sorts of signals fly around. But what could be done to prevent it? I think it's difficult to completely prevent it, but normal navigational practices really dictate that you should never navigate on one system alone. So when you are navigating, you should use other means of backup. So either using terrestrial observations, bearings to known objects on land, for example, or you should use your radar to navigate, position fixing and do parallel indexing and so on, so that you always have more than just one method of navigating. I think that's probably the best way of mitigating that risk. And then, of course, if GNSS spoofing is experienced, then you should report it to, as a minimum, your flag state. And I believe that also NATO has a program where they collect information about GNSS spoofing in order to inform at least NATO countries about this risk. So it's also an idea to report to other entities that are sort of, you could say, on the good side and try to help prevent this problem.
Okay, we have another question here for you. 2020 is the last year of Horizon, and we can see it brings many partners from different countries together in order to enhance the cybersecurity in the EU. How much contribution Horizon 2020 has given to the cybersecurity zone of the EU?
A good question. To be honest, I don't know. I'm not very familiar with the Horizon 2020 program, so I'm afraid I can't answer the question.
Okay. And could the vulnerability arises from the use of high-tech regarding cybersecurity be solved through the implementation of additional measures?
Yes, clearly that's a yes. And I know that there are companies that specialize in detection techniques and so on, where they go in and analyze the data flow across a network and from different devices. That could be one way of doing it. Another way could be to have perhaps a sort of a mini firewall on each device that you hook up to the network. I'm sure there are many ways of doing this, but again, before throwing a lot of money after one specific solution, I think it's important to look at the onboard IT and OT systems as really a network of systems where perhaps some mitigation measures are much more effective than others. So you need to look at it comprehensively, and I would actually argue that if you don't have really well qualified staff in-house to do this, then it could perhaps be an idea to seek the assistance of external consultants, for example, because it can be quite a complicated task to undertake to make a complete cybersecurity risk assessment of a vessel and a company.
Okay, and we have another question here for you. The cost appeared because of cyber attacks on ports is significant number, as we saw in the case of attack to Maersk. Is there a possibility that the efficiency came with the implementation of digitalization will be outweighed by the cost of cyber attacks to the ports?
Well, I think it's difficult to answer. I mean, there's no question that it was a really expensive cyber attack, but there's also no question that port operations have become increasingly efficient over the years, and digitalization has, of course, played a key role in that. Regardless, there's really no choice now. I mean, port operations are so deeply digitalized that to even contemplate going back to more sort of non-digital solutions, it's never going to happen. So I think we have to embrace the digital solutions fully, and we have to do what we can, or at least do what is necessary to protect them. And I think it is very much a learning experience, as indeed it is with physical safety threats. If you look at how regulation have developed over the decades, very often they arise as the result of some sort of catastrophe where all of a sudden you realize that you haven't done enough. And I think the same is very true when it comes to cyber risks. I mean, we have to learn. We will do that by using common sense, but I'm afraid reality is also that what is really sort of opening people's minds to learning is really when disaster strikes, and you know, in a certain way you could argue that the big attack on Maersk and a lot of other companies that were also affected was really just one such example. And I think a lot of very valuable lessons were learned, and fortunately Maersk was very willing to share a lot of their own lessons learned, and so I can warmly recommend that you just do a quick Google search, and I'm sure that you will see a lot of speeches and a lot of internet articles describing all the lessons learned that Maersk did. I think it's a worthwhile read.
All right, thank you so much for your answer. Rafael, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear. So my apologies, we had connection problems.
Okay,
So,
resolved.
yeah, okay.
The most important thing is resolved.
Software was very easy to solve. It was the restart of the computer again, and now it's okay.
I see. So we have questions directed to you as well, Rafael, and one of those is, does the port community system of Valencia Port have any cooperative relations with other port community system? If not, why? And are there plans to do so?
Well, in the beginning, we are working now in order to connect all the different PCS, the port community systems in Spain. So, but at the moment they are not connected. Well, in fact, we have to explain better that the port community system has, as commented in the presentation, different stakeholders, but different stakeholders that can access with different roles. It's not the same role. You cannot access to everything of the PCS communication system. You have different participation with different access to different data. So sometimes the port authorities, yes, has connection and cooperation with other PCS in this part, but not the rest of the supply stakeholders. But the idea would be to connect everything through a single PCS in Spain, in our case, in order to agilize all the information that we are compiling from the PCS.
All right. One more question, Rafael, that's directed to you. As we know, COVID-19 hit hard various industries. It led to decrease in the budgets of the companies of shipping industry. Do you expect we will witness the hesitancy in the investment of cybersecurity by the actors of maritime industry because of lack of budget?
Just a moment. I hear you know well at the end.
Would you like me to repeat it again?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the question is, as we know, COVID-19 hit hard various industries. Yeah. It led to decrease in the budgets of the companies of shipping industry. Do you expect we will witness the hesitancy in the investment of cybersecurity by the actors of maritime industry because of lack of budget?
Well, indeed, with the COVID-19 impact, we have had a problem. We have the opportunity to develop the function of the different systems. So, because in order to, about the telework and other actions, so it's real the problem, the impact, the economic problem that we have, but we have had a lot of threats coming from the cyber attacks. So in this sense, companies must to invest money in cyber risk, but not only in technology, because we can talk about the technologies at all. So it's more on the human factor. So how to train to the personnel and the use of the different networks. So it's important to invest in this kind of aspects. So cybersecurity is not only technology, it's also the human factor is quite important, because maybe for me is one of the best important aspects, because the user has to access to the platform, and they have to know what are the cyber risks, and to be sensitive about them.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question, I think it's directed to both of you. So the question is, I'll ask you a second to find it. Okay, according to Naval Dome, cyber attacks on the maritime industry will have increased by 900% in the past 4 years. Do you think more digitalization will bring new issues to the cybersecurity of the maritime industry?
Well, indeed, yes. The cyber attack has increased a lot, exponentially, because as commented, the connectivity of the system, so the digital transformation. So we have an example that the International Maritime Organization suffered an attack a couple of weeks ago. So you know that the supply chain is one of the targets of this in cyber attack. So the investment of this kind of the investment on cybersecurity is essential in this progress to the port of the future, because we are increasing the systems, the connectivities, the sensors. So it's one of our main targets or main challenges in a port.
Thank you very much. Jacob, do you have any comment for that question? No, for this one. Okay.
Nothing to add for this one, no.
All right. We have a question directed to you. I just ask you a second. Dear Mr. Larsen, interference of the smart ship will be huge enhancement and development for maritime industry. However, the passive development brings new vulnerabilities that could be significant obstacle. So would like to get your feedback.
It's absolutely true that for every step we take in digitalizing ships and ports and the interface, even more new vulnerabilities will arise, and that also, that illustrates perfectly that a cyber risk assessment is really an ongoing process. It's not so much a one-off that you do and then you're all happy with that. So every time a new system is bolted on, or a new procedure is introduced, or you need to keep in mind the cybersecurity aspects of that, assess the associated risk, and then mitigate them down to a satisfactory level. So the observation is absolutely correct.
All right, thank you very much. We have a question directed to Rafael. So the question is, among the actors of the industry, the need for automatic emergency systems is stressed several times. When we will be able to see complete application of the system to the maritime industry? Is the emergency system used by your side effective that can cover all options? Rafael, can you hear us? You're muted. I'm sorry, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay. So, well, when we talk about the automatic emergency systems, yes, it's true that they are stressed 7 times, because we have false alarms, and it's not easy sometimes to manage the response against this kind of sensors. Mm-hmm. So, but the idea here is the use of, we believe that would be improved better in order with the use of the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, in order to correlate well the different data that we can receive. So the idea is to we have start with this kind of situations. Using artificial intelligence, it could be the future for this kind of automatic emergency automatic response.
Okay, thank you very much. One more question to Jacob. Okay, the question is, what category of vessels is cybersecurity rules applicable to?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question, really. It's really the ISM code is really applicable to all ships, as they say, and the ISM code is something that falls out of the Safety of Life at Seas Convention, SOLAS, and SOLAS has some limits on the size of ships and so on. But essentially, if you have a ship and it's already covered by the safety management or by the ISM code and the requirement to have a safety management system and to be audited every year by the flag state and so on, then you're also covered by the regulation addressing cyber risk management.
Okay, and one more question to you, Jacob. Is there a specific cyber risk assessment form to be used?
Yeah, I understand fully why this question is being asked, because it's always nice to have a good form as a starting point. There is no specific form, I'm afraid, and this was something that we discussed in the working group and agreed not to include. And the reason is that different ship owner companies have different concepts for exactly how they want to analyze and mitigate the risks, and so it was decided not to have a form that would sort of interfere with that, if you like. And the reason is really, as I also mentioned through the presentation, that these risks are best explained to both the seafarers, the office staff, and not least senior management, if they are presented in a form that these groups are already familiar with. And this is why we recommend that you use the existing terminology and the existing concepts in whatever safety management system you have to really look at cyber risks also.
All right. So I know that we are a little bit, past the time of the conference. Simply, if you don't mind, I would like to ask a couple of more questions and then come to the final notes. One more question to Rafael.
Yeah.
All right, let me find the question. Yeah, here it is. I enjoyed from your presentation a lot. I have a question. Considering the increasing trend of attacks to the ports, does the EU take the use of single unified approach to endpoint security into consideration in order to prevent the attacks?
Okay.
Should I repeat once again?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So considering the increasing trend of attacks to the ports, does the EU take the use of single unified approach to endpoint security into consideration in order to prevent the attacks?
Yes. Well, one of of this is this kind of digital the risk that we have that they have increased a lot. So the system, the connection with the systems must to, yes, is we have to invest in this kind of to prevent the final impact that we can have from the cyber risk. So the idea is to have an integral vision of everything in order to reduce this kind of threats.
All right, thank you very much. Here is another question related to ports. The digitalization has caused the ports to be involved in complex information flows that depend on different ICT systems interacting with each other. The cyber threat can occur basically in every piece of data that's exchanged and saved in the existing ICT systems. If it's that much dangerous, why the digitalization process is being accelerated?
It's a good question. It's a good question because, yes, as mentioned, we have a lot of new opportunities with these ICT system, new technologies, but also we have a lot of risk, a lot of threats. And then we are accelerating many in order to be more efficient with our operational activities. We are in competition, many ports are in competition in order to attract business. And then ports invest a lot of money in this kind of new technologies, accelerating this kind of ICT systems in order to manage that data, a huge amount of data. And, but we are thinking that when we talk about the future of this digitalization of these ICT systems, we are thinking now with the automatization of the different activities. So yes, I agree that it's a risk, and that we can stop this evolution and this is transformation. But yes, we have increased a lot this kind of risk. I agree with that we have to balance, no, between the accelerating of this kind of systems and balance what are the new opportunities versus the new risks.
Okay, thank you very much. Jacob, do you have any comment for that question?
Yes, I can comment on that. And actually, it's true that with the increased digitalization, you know, it appears that risk is increasing. But actually, I would argue that going back to the point I made earlier, that vulnerability is not the same as a risk. For a vulnerability to you know, be the gateway to increased risk, you need threat, and you need intent from someone to exploit that vulnerability. And if that is not there, then it will not materialize. So while it may be technically possible, it's not sure that someone will do it. Let me give you an example. I have some friends who are airline pilots, and I was flying home from London, and just by occasion, when walking onto the plane, I saw that it was actually one of my friends sitting there, and I waved at him, and that was all very funny. And then after we had taken off, the stewardess came and told me, your friend, if you like, he would like to see you in the cockpit, then you can sit and watch the approach to the airport where we were landing. But we have to leave this airspace we're in now because according to regulations and blah blah. And that was interesting. So I was in the cockpit during the approach, and I noticed that the pilots were communicating with the tower. And I have a background from the military, and I also realized that the communications or the voice, the radios they were using, they were unencrypted. So it's basically, it was a network that you could just buy a radio down at the local radio shop, and you could tune into the tower frequency, and you would be able to hear all the communications going on between the tower and the aircraft. And I asked my friend, how come that this communications is not encrypted? I mean, you use an open network, you use the same call sign throughout the whole sequence of the approach, so there's no sort of added security, and the call sign was easily identifiable, so you could sort of calculate or easily see which actual plane it was belonging to, because it used something like the flight number or something like that you could go in on an open source and say, okay, it must be the flight from whatever, London or wherever it was coming from. And he said, yeah, well, it's funny you say it, because I come from the military myself, and I always also thought that it was a bit strange, but I've been flying now for 15 years commercially, and I never heard about any trouble with people interfering with the tower frequency and the communication between aircraft and tower. So again, it's a clear-cut example of a completely clear vulnerability in a system, but at the same time, because there's no intent, there's no threat, and therefore the risk is regarded as small enough not to do anything more about it. I guess this will change over time, because there are other risks associated with voice communication with aircraft. For example, there is a tendency that sometimes if you are not a fluent English speaker, on either side, misunderstandings tend to happen and so on. So I think they're looking at a chat system now, but again, if the threat is not there, then you don't really need to mitigate the risk. But of course, you can't, in taking that approach, you really accept that you don't mitigate the risk to zero.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And let's continue with the last question for today. So recent years, the unemployment because of the implementation of digitalization, the increase of investment in cybersecurity will solve the unemployment problem, and it could preserve maritime industry from threats. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I believe here in this question that it's a change. It's a change of, we are talking about sometimes, as I said in my presentation, the discussion about the reduction of jobs. And from my side, from my point of view, is more a change of what kind of jobs. So with automatizations, we can see new jobs of maintenance of the development of new technologies, the maintenance of this kind of technology. So has changed to more qualified jobs. So there's like a behavior change of the kind of jobs, and then I agree that reduce some of the jobs, but others open with the new technologies, with the maintenance, with the development implemented. So this kind of implemented increase also new jobs that, for example, in our company that we are working on different projects more focused on technology, new technology, it's not easy to find qualified people in different sectors in order to manage this kind of technologies, because this kind of technology is growing up very fast, and then people need time for training, and I think that we have to invest in this kind of things, on training of the people, and to increase the jobs on this field of the new technologies.
Thank you very much. Jacob, any comments?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my cat was going crazy beside me here, so I'm working from home. So if you don't mind, could you repeat the question, please? Thank you.
Of course I can. I ask you just a second. Okay, I found that. Recent years, unemployment because of the implementation of digitalization, the increase of investment in cybersecurity will solve the unemployment problem, and it could preserve the maritime industry from threats. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think it's difficult to say that people who have become unemployed due to digitalization can then move into the IT industry and help do work there, and including mitigate cyber risk. So I think that sort of transition, while it may be possible in some cases, others will try to seek employment elsewhere with other things. So I think it's a bit difficult to comment on. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. I think we came to an end, so we have to conclude because it's almost, let's say more 30 minutes that we are here. I would love to hear your final closing notes, if you have, for us. Then, let's say we can finalize our conference.
Yeah, but many thanks for that. Then let me start, since I still have my microphone open. Okay. I would say that cyber risk management is a challenge, and it's a growing challenge with the increased connectivity of ships and the increased reliance on digitalization. That said, I would also argue that currently most ship owner companies actually have very good opportunities to mitigate the risks in a fairly simple way by well-known means. But it is important that the cyber risk assessment is carried out in a proper and thorough way. And I can only warmly recommend ship owner companies to study the cybersecurity guidelines that the industry associations are in the very final stages of developing, and which we expect will be released sometime mid-November. And if for some reason they are delayed, the version 3, which is currently publicly available, is a very good starting point, which will get you 98% of the way also. So cyber risks are there. They should not be underestimated, but they should also not be overestimated. They should be estimated exactly as what they are, and that requires a thorough risk assessment. Thank you.
Okay, so let me now. Yes, to comment. Well, yes, it's true that we are in a change of businesses with the digital transformation, and we are implementing a lot of different systems with the new technologies, sensorizing the different in order to know exactly what happens in real time. So this is a very good opportunity to increase our activity, to be more effective as sports. But also it's important because you can reduce you can improve the sustainable behavior, because you can analyze well where you have the energy consumptions, to reduce the CO2 emissions. So you can control the machinery that you use at port. Also, you can agilize a lot of port operations. So that is a very good opportunities. But also the cyber risk are there, as my colleague said. The cyber risk are there because everything is connected. So we have discussed about the useful of this new technology that is clear, but also the importance that I mentioned it for us is the human factor, because many of the risks is coming from how to say, because you have people is not know well what are the risks. So and then I think that it's good this kind of these new technologies, but we have to invest also with our workers, employers, in order to know exactly what happens, how to use and how to respond to cyber threats, cyber risks. And this is quite important, is to analyze these technologies and people.
Thank you very much, Jacob and Raphael. Thank you very much, first of all, for your time, for your remarkable presentations, for all the insights. It was my pleasure to have you today at this conference. And also thanks to all the attendees, all the people who attended, who listened to us for their questions. I'm sorry for a couple of unattended questions, simply due to the lack of time, we couldn't, let's say, get back to them. For presentation and for recording requests, you are kindly asked to contact us through info@bsgroup.uk. And for your kind attention, the next virtual conference of BS Group will be presented tomorrow about green ports at 3 p.m. Central European Time. It was just as a note. And thank you again, and hopefully to meet you in future events. And please stay safe and well. Take care. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
See you.
nice
Bye.
day.